The curse of the Allflame update for Path of Exile has been revealed, and we've received the patch notes. So there's some pretty big changes coming in this patch, not just in terms of the new league mechanic, but also some overhauls to core systems. So in this video I'm going to cover my 3 biggest winners and 3 biggest losers of patch 3.29, beginning with the losers. And we're starting out with life stacking. Now, life stacking setups using Wrathpith Globe have been quite strong for a long time now. This was one of the ways to truly scale spells deep into the endgame, but in some of the more recent leagues we've had additions to the game that have slowly but surely increased the power level of this archetype, and even expanded its reach into different types of builds due to some crucial new uniques. This started back in patch 3.24 with the addition of the Apostate, which allowed life stacking to a degree that wasn't really possible before by utilising energy shield gear for raw life. Then in a subsequent patch, life rolls on crafted gear also had their ranges improved so that you could obtain more life from each modifier, and a lot more recently than that we had the addition of the Grey Wind and Foulborn Ghost Wraith, 2 uniques that each enabled new life stacking builds. The Grey Wind simply grants flat attack damage based on your maximum life, and pairs extremely well with Wrathpith Globe and Crown of Eyes. Meanwhile, for the Foulborn Ghost Wraith, this could be used in a life stacking setup to enable Energy Blade for either an attack based setup or spells using Battle Mage and Spellblade. But in patch 3.29, almost all of these key items are being nerfed. Firstly, the main enabler, Wrathpith Globe. This shield is receiving a huge 40% nerf to its scaling, going from 5% increased spell damage and 5% increased spell critical strike chance per 100 life, down to just 3% of each. Note that Foulborn Wrathpith didn't escape this change either, with the increased damage over time coming down by the same amount. Now, it's important to note here that Wrathpith builds don't really obtain any increased damage modifiers from elsewhere because it's inefficient to do so for the most part. And that's likely still going to be the case for this archetype, but that does mean that a huge chunk of damage will be lost from this one change alone. But there's more in store for this archetype, because 2 of the aforementioned items have also been directly nerfed. The Grey Wind now rolls a maximum of 10% of your life as flat attack damage, down from 12%. Meanwhile, Foulborn Ghost Wraith is being nerfed again for the second patch in a row. It started at 50% of your life as energy shield, then it was 40% in 3.28, and now in 3.29 it will be 35%. So any builds that were using Wrathpith combined with either of those are taking a pretty big hit in the upcoming patch, and builds using just Wrathpith Globe will take a smaller but still very meaningful nerf. But ultimately, Wrathpith Globe has been very strong for a long while now, and I think this nerf has been expected for some time. Next up in the biggest losers, it's Breach. Now, in the Mirage League, there were a lot of really strong endgame farms, mostly due to the nature of the league mechanic and how much work GGG had put into making those interactions rewarding when you did encounter them in maps. But arguably, the most lucrative mechanic was Breach. On its own, it was exceptionally good at giant loot explosions, but when combined with Mirage, it was just insane. However, Breach in the Curse of the Allflame League is going to look and feel a lot different. Firstly, there's a huge list of changes here that will essentially translate into significantly less monster density for your Breach encounters in maps. The first change on this list right here may end up being the most significant nerf because we don't actually get a number. We're just told that the average number of monsters in Breach packs will be lower. And the thing is, this is going to be a compounding nerf because a lot of the other changes on this list here are direct nerfs to the scaling of those monster packs, which in some cases just don't scale in the same way anymore. For example, the 5% increased pack size small nodes on the Atlas tree for Breach are now going to be 5% increased rare monsters. Now notably, Hiveblood and Womb Gifts will be unaffected by these changes, so you'll still be getting the same amount of those as before, but the use cases for those are being nerfed with the set of changes at the end of the list here. There will be lower inherent modifier tier rating for crafted equipment from the Genesis tree, so this means you'll see higher tier mods less often, and the equipment portion of the Genesis tree is also losing 4 points to spend, so less customization into your crafting process, which will naturally lead to more undesirable outcomes. There's also going to be lower chances to birth extra items, so less items being produced, and on top of that, the nodes that influence the chance for modifier types to appear are being nerfed from 500% increased chance to 300%, so overall you'll be seeing a lot less items with the modifiers you're looking for. Now lastly, in the biggest losers for this video, it's Totems. It's important to mention here that in regards to some spell totem setups, these will actually end up being very similar to the previous league in terms of power level, and that's because many spells received buffs in this patch. But when looking at these changes, it's important to compare archetypes, for example totems versus self-casting, and in this case, totems are receiving several nerfs in the upcoming Curse of the Allflame League. Firstly, the Hierophant's more damage multiplier from Ritual of Awakening is going from 5% per summon totem to 3%. And I will say that I think this and any changes like it are important to make Hierophant a bit less mandatory when it comes to totem builds, because after the changes to totem placement speed also affecting how fast totems emerge from last patch, it's now even harder to justify a totem build on anything that isn't a Hierophant, due to just how much placement speed this class has access to, so overall I do think this is a good change. However, baseline totems are also receiving nerfs, with both Spell Totem and Ballista Totem supports getting weaker in 3.29. The less damage multiplier on Spell Totems is going from 40% to 50% at gem level 20, whilst the same stat on Ballista Totems will go from 24% to 30% less at level 20. And there's also some additional nerfs to scaling from the passive tree, where the increased critical strike chance mastery from having summoned a totem recently is going from 60% to 40%. Meanwhile, the crit scaling modifiers on the Shaman's Dominion wheel are also being toned down. And overall, some totem builds will feel weaker in 3.29, Hierophant in particular will feel these changes the most, but these builds will certainly still be playable. Now let's move on to the biggest winners, beginning with Legion. Legion in this update is receiving an unexpected upgrade, but unlike Abyss, which we'll be talking about shortly, this change is mostly focused around the rewards of this league mechanic rather than the content itself. Firstly, incubators are being deleted. They're just gone, and this is a big win in my mind since this was one of the more irritating reward systems with extra steps for no reason. But it will be gone in 3.29, no more repeatedly clicking these on your gear. However, there are some more important changes being made to Legion, because the incubators are being replaced with a new exclusive reward, Vestigial Uniques. This new system will provide access to currency items that can be used to enshroud a unique equipment item of your choice, which can then be placed in crystals in the domain of Timeless Conflict to be charged by doing the encounter. And upon charging these crystals, you can shatter them to reveal a Vestigial Unique of the same item type, which then takes on an exclusive modifier of the unique you originally used the enshrouded currency item on. Now, to be clear here, this is going to be an extremely RNG heavy system in terms of trying to actually get a specific outcome, but I think this is going to create some incredible chase items that haven't been seen before in Path of Exile. Some of the items that were showcased in the reveal were absolutely insane. For example, a lightning coil that has taken on Cloak of Flame's exclusive modifier for a total 70% fizz taken as on the body slot alone. That is incredibly powerful, and I think we're going to end up seeing essentially mirror tier unique items coming out of this system, which should make the Legion mechanic a lot more exciting to interact with. However, there is a bit more going on here too, because the unrelenting emblems have also been scrapped in favour of making the core version of the Domain of Timeless Conflict more difficult and rewarding at a baseline level. This should help bring this content up to a modern standard, but that also means that Stasis Prison should be accessible from the normal domain encounter now, which may make it generally more available too. Overall, big win for Legion. I'm looking forward to farming this in 3.29. Now, from one league mechanic to another, the next biggest winner for this video is Abyss, which is getting a big overhaul for 3.29. We had already guessed that this was going to be the case from the teasers, but Abyss as an in-map mechanic will be receiving the PoE2 treatment, so you no longer need to chase Abysses around the map for mediocre rewards. Instead, you'll now slay enemies on top of abyssal cracks to open up pits of lightless monsters, including several new monsters with new skills and mechanics. Important to mention here is that GGG specifically mentioned the combat feel of Abyss, which was lacking from the previous version, and I will say that I feel the PoE 2 version of Abyss does have that very visceral, high-impact feel, so I hope that translates well over to PoE 1 with this change as well. Now, a lot of the rewards for Abyss will remain the same or be improved. So if you enjoyed builds that were making use of some Abyss unique items, for example, they will still be accessible in 3.29. The Abyssal Depths will still include the original Lich fights, and they will still retain their core drops, but there's also going to be a new Abyss Pinnacle boss with brand new exclusive unique drops too, and the Abyss Scarabs and the Atlas Tree nodes are also seeing a massive improvement, so along with the changes to other mechanics in this patch, I could see Abyss being one of the main farms for Curse of the Allflame. Now let's move on to the final winner for this video, and it's the Scion. For many years, the Scion has felt like the outlier class that never really got the attention that the other classes have gotten. Whether that be the balance changes or the reworks, it mostly felt like the Scion had been completely forgotten about. But in the space of just 2 back-to-back leagues, the Scion has received 2 additional Ascendancy options, finally putting it on par for choice with the other classes. Now the most important topic here is of course the brand new Luminary Ascendancy, which pairs with the new core introduction of Mercenaries of Trathus in patch 3.29. The Luminary will be the only class that can take on a permanent mercenary and customize their gear, similar to the original League in 3.26, but it will function a bit differently with nodes on this new Ascendancy to unlock gear slots for unique items. This is sure to unleash a bunch of new builds in the upcoming patch, but on top of that, one of the Scion's other Ascendancy options that was new just last League, the Reliquarian, is also getting its Legally update, and I wanted to mention this one here because this update doesn't just change the nodes, but it also generally buffs the class by quite a large margin, and hopefully this is the rough power level we'll be able to expect from it going forward when the nodes inevitably change again in future updates. So there you have it, my 3 biggest winners and losers for Path of Exile patch 3.29, and I will say here at the end that arguably the absolute biggest loser this patch was Minion Pack support, which has just been completely changed in functionality, but I didn't include that in the list because everyone already knew this was going to be the case, so there's that. But what are your thoughts on Curse of the Allflame? Let me know by commenting below, and thanks for watching this video. As always, stay tuned and stay safe.